G'day friends, it's Andrew here again from Nature's Image Photography with an update on the latest development on my Panasonic Lumix journey. I recently got myself a Lumix S5 Mark II, which is the first time I've ever owned a full-frame Lumix camera. And I took delivery of it just before I left on an autumn landscape tour in New Zealand, which gave me the perfect opportunity to put it to the test. Now for all those people who follow me for my Micro Four Thirds content, don't worry, I haven't said goodbye to that format. I took all three cameras to New Zealand with me, and I did use all of them. But of course we all like to play with our newest toy the most, and since I got my S5 II with the 20 to 60mm kit lens that comes with it, it was ideally suited to a New Zealand landscape adventure. If you really only want to see my latest work with Micro Four Thirds, keep an eye out for my upcoming African tour videos, where the full frame took a back seat and I shot almost everything on the G9 and GH6. So in addition to simply wanting to take some great photos, there were a few aspects of the S5 II I really wanted to put to the test. Those were the image stabilizer, the high resolution mode, and the low light performance. That last one, the ability to shoot at higher ISO without a lot of noise, was of particular interest because in my opinion, if the Micro Four Thirds cameras have one weakness, that's it. Now this camera has been out for a while now, and there are plenty of great technical reviews out there already. As my regular viewers know, I'm not a very technical reviewer, so I don't use color charts under controlled indoor settings. I prefer to see how a camera performs out in the real world. So first let me share my impressions of those three aspects of the S5 Mark II, and then I want to simply share a selection of my favourite shots from the New Zealand tour. As usual, I'm including camera settings for those who are interested, and if anyone wants to thank me for the extra time I put into adding that information, you can always thank me with a coffee, and you'll find a link in the details below. On the first 2 nights of the tour, I wandered around the city of Christchurch, not really in search of great photo opportunities, just looking to test out a couple of these features before the serious touring got underway. Now let's start with the image stabilizer. The Lumix S5 II offers up to 5 stops of in-body stabilization, and with certain lenses you can get dual stabilization of up to 6.5 stops. The 20 to 60mm kit lens is not one of them, so I had to rely on the in-body stabilization alone. Thankfully, on a very wide lens, camera shake is not so noticeable as it is on a bigger lens, so I took some wide shots handheld after the sun went down to see if I could get some sharp images at slower speeds, and here are some of my results. Those first few shots were not a bad start, getting quite usable images at a 1/13th and a 15th of a second. So I tried going slower, this shot taken at an 1/8th of a second and still producing a surprisingly sharp result for a handheld photo. The slower I went, the poorer my success rate became, but by steadying myself against a light pole, I managed to get this photo at 1.3 seconds. Not sharp, but sharpish. Of course, normally there'd be no reason not to use a tripod for stuff like this, but it's nice to know that in the real world, if I have to shoot a little slower than normal without a tripod, I can still have total confidence in the effectiveness of this in-body stabilizer. Now onto the performance shooting in low light with high ISO. I really wanted to see how the full frame would go because on the G9 and GH6, I really don't like shooting higher than 1600 if I can avoid it. The S5 II gets great reviews for its low noise sensor, and as you've already seen from those earlier shots, I was taking quite a few photos at 6400 ISO and getting some pretty good results. So now to push it a little further, and here's a shot taken at 12800 ISO. This is the unedited RAW file, and now a version that I've cropped and adjusted for brightness and contrast, but I haven't applied any noise reduction. Take a look at a closer cropped segment, and you can see the noise is noticeable, but only when blown up to 100%. These are results I wouldn't have dreamed of with any previous camera I've owned, Micro Four Thirds or otherwise. So now I went nuts and tried this shot at 20,000 ISO. First we look at the RAW file, and the noise is noticeable but not terrible, and you really have to blow it up to 100% to consider it any kind of problem. So with just a bit of editing and now applying some noise reduction, I've ended up with a perfectly usable image. These tests at the beginning of the trip gave me all the confidence in the world when it came to shooting some more serious night photography once the tour really got underway. Now we come to my third special interest project, and this was to test out the high resolution mode. Unlike my GH6, which has a handheld option, high res on the S5 Mark II requires a tripod. This mode takes 8 images with one press of the button, each with just a tiny shift of the sensor. Then it merges those 8 images into one giant 96 megapixel file. I've used high-res on my G9 and my GH6, and you can find my videos on YouTube about both those cameras. It produces a photo that's a match for cameras with a much higher megapixel count. I used to think high-res was only about producing much bigger enlargements, but with more experience now I understand it can also be about capturing better and sharper detail in photos of equal size. It also allows more croppability without losing too much resolution. It's a great function, and this was my first chance to use it on a full-frame camera. So no surprises here, I'm just happy to report it's just as easy to use as my other Lumix cameras, with the exception of the GH6 having the handheld option, and it makes the quality of a great sensor even better. I'll probably make a more detailed video about this somewhere down the track, so watch out for that one. Okay, it's time for a bit less talk and a few more photos, so now I want to end the video with some of my favourite shots from the South Island, New Zealand photography tour. I'm including some shooting info for your information, and if my settings seem a bit inconsistent, remember this is a new camera and my first full frame, so I'm still getting to know it. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy the photos.